Supreme Court, where individual rights are supposed to be protected, think it's fine if government invades our financial privacy, spies on us in our bedrooms, regulates church schools, and restricts our free speech. Meanwhile, at the Congress, everything is up for grabs. Right. Everything is up for grabs.
Justice. Can you get justice?
As it's yours.
Thank you, people. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm William Wagener, taking off my white hat for you, and we have an honorary white hat for our guest, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. I love this cartoon. If you didn't catch it, let me read what this cartoon says. It says, how much is justice? See, is that the slot machine that dispenses just, over here? And he says, you just keep putting money into it until you're broke and hope for the best. Now, those are two non-attorneys trying to get justice out of the justice slot machine. What I have with me today is a guest who has been an honorable member of the California State Bar Association. Using the term honorable doesn't really apply to the state bar because we know they disbar people like Richard Fine.
All the new money went into the special fund. But when it came time to get paid, the judge refused to pay me.
Richard Fine, who simply was involved in winning a case that he should have won, and they said, no, we can't let you win this case. You must lose. And it had something to do with the thing called Sturgeon case. And now we've had Sturgeon 1, Sturgeon 2, Sturgeon 3. Somebody told me they're up to Sturgeon 4 and Sturgeon 5 trying to get justice out of the justice slot machine. And the justice slot machine simply won't give you justice. It just sucks up your money. So with that in the background, I want to welcome to the studio, live here on Wednesday, the 22nd of March, my guest, former attorney Daniel Dichak. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Nice to be on your show. I'm very grateful that you're having me as a guest.
I don't normally allow attorneys to come on my show unless I'm going to grill them like Joyce Dudley, the prosecutor for Santa Barbara County, who dearly needs to be grilled, but that's not today's show. Let me go back. You grew up where, in Los Angeles?
I grew up in Canada. My parents were in the drive-in theater business in Canada. Then I moved to Texas, where my parents were then in the theater business with a gentleman who ended up starting the Cinemark theater chain, which I'm sure everybody's aware of because it's the 5th largest theater chain or so in the United States and around the world. And then I decided to come to California many years ago, over 30 years ago, and write the California bar. I passed the bar.
30 years ago?
Over 30 years ago. And I got hired by Melvin Belli, the famous lawyer in San Francisco, for a short period. Then I came to Los Angeles, worked for a law firm there for 2 lawyers in Torrance, and then I went to a law firm near the airport, and I got a lot of experience, trial experience, and I practiced with distinction for years in different areas of the law, a lot of litigation, commercial litigation, real estate, divorce, the odd criminal case. Got a lot of experience. I had a good reputation as an attorney, and I loved helping people. And I didn't go into the law because I wanted to make money like most lawyers. I went into the law, obviously anybody needs to make a living, but I went into the law mainly because I really did love the law, and I loved studying the law, and I wanted to make a difference and help people, which is not what a lot of attorneys do. A lot of attorneys are just fixated on making money. So I really enjoyed practicing law. And then, of course, you know the story. I got targeted by the state bar because I happened to sue important people, such as a former state bar president, similar to Richard Fine, suing important people. And
let me interrupt. You said you took the state bar. You came to California and took the bar exam. What law school did you attend before doing that?
I went to 2 law schools, a prominent law school on the East Coast called Laval University, which is the oldest law school in Canada, which is second oldest law school after Harvard, very well-renowned law school where several prime ministers in Canada have gone, for example, Jean Chrétien, Brian Mulroney. Then I went to the Southern Methodist University in Dallas, which is one of the 2 best law schools in Texas, and I got a master's degree. So I have a bachelor's of law and a master's. So I'm not, and I went to 5 universities in total. So my academic background is not, from a little flunky law school. I'm from 2 very reputable law schools.
You didn't go to one of these unaccredited law school. LaSalle is the equivalent to Harvard in Canada, right?
The Laval University, they call it in French University Laval, is founded by the Jesuits around the same time that Harvard Law School came into existence. Second oldest law school in North America.
What
believe
year
it's
was that?
Well, it was founded by the Jesuits. Well, when I went, it was back, I graduated from high school in '76, and I got into law school at 19. I got in before I finished my bachelor's degree. I had very good grades. I did 3 years there, and then I got accepted into the Master of Comparative Law program at Southern Methodist, which is considered a very prestigious program with students all around the world. And then I was living in Texas, and unfortunately my dad passed away, and I decided that I wanted to come out here. I passed the bar here. Like I said, got hired initially by Melvin Belli, the famous lawyer. Then I went from San Francisco to LA, got hired by two good lawyers in Torrance area, worked for them for a while, and then I worked for a law firm with a diverse practice, a very well-known law firm, and did a lot of trial work and got a lot of experiences, enjoying my life, of course, and helping a lot of people, and had a lot of satisfied clients. Did thousands of cases to help people.
Did Melvin Belli never tell you, have a plan B if you attack the system?
Well, Melvin Belli, who's one of the greatest attorneys of all time, was actually himself targeted by the state bar, and they tried to disbar him about 2 or 3 times. And he actually was written up in a major decision of the California Supreme Court where he did a Scotch ad.
What?
Years ago in the
I never heard of this.
in the early '60s, it's a case called Belli versus State Bar. It's in the California Supreme Court. And he did a Scotch ad, and he was already a very famous lawyer. You know, he was the father of demonstrative evidence, had all those big tort recoveries for people. A lot of famous clients like Errol Flynn, his good friend. And Belli he was winning so many big victories in front of juries, standing up for regular people and not big insurance companies. He used to refer to the insurance company, the Holy Grail insurance company. He was like Robin Hood. And Belli.
I knew there was a reason I liked
No,
Belli.
but Melvin Belli loved me. He met me, and he was very nice to me. But very nice man. I met him at his building in San Francisco on the famous building he had, where he used to hoist the Jolly Roger flag. But Belli got targeted by the bar in this case that I read about in his memoirs, where he did a Scotch ad, and he said, at my house, at my bar, we drink this kind of Scotch. Well, they went after him before the case of Bates versus Arizona, which allowed advertising. They claimed he was advertising. And they initially got a 1-year suspension from him, and he went all the way to the California Supreme Court, and the California Supreme Court gave him a 1-month suspension as what he said as a sop to the establishment. Shouldn't have gotten anything. But back in those...
Well, that was a flashback to a show I did with Daniel Dizak not too long ago. I have a new guest today, and I'm taking off my white hat for you that tuned in, because you're going to get something that you will not find on ABC, CBS, Fox News, and all the rest of those creatures. But before I go into that, I want to mention my friend Thomas Mesereau is filing an appeal. He was defending Bill Cosby, whose son, his only son, was murdered just about 21 years ago. And before I go into that, I want to mention the Apartment House Owners Association News has an article that we really all should be paying attention to. Even if you're a renter, you really should read this. So I've got the inside story here out of the association. I think this is what issue is this? I don't know, but it's fairly recent. Just got it in the mail not too long ago. You turn to page 60, and this is what you see. The negative consequences of a Costa-Hawkins repeal are entirely predictable. Assembly Bill 1506, repealing the Costa-Hawkins Act, failed to make it out of committee. Those who believe that such problems as rising rents, evictions, and loss of ethnic and economic diversity in San Francisco can be solved legislatively by unrestricted rent control will continue to believe that as an article of faith, immune to the evidence that unrestricted rent control has been disastrous in cities where it has been enacted. In bold print, I don't think you can see it there on the screen, but in bold print right below it says, it's safe to predict that we'll see more efforts to repeal Costa-Hawkins, including the current initiative to put a repeal measure on the November 2018 state ballot. Well, people, I want to point out to you that the first time I went to New York City, I was going to the Boy Scout National Jamboree in 1964. And there was a section of New York. I was astounded. I thought New York was skyscrapers and beautiful mansions. There were blocks and blocks. It looked like it had been bombed out in World War II and never rebuilt. I was just dumbfounded. And it stuck in my mind. That was 1960, 1960, or was it 1964? It was 1964. I was just turning 18, or just had. And I'm on the way to the National Boy Scout Jamboree in Valley Forge. It would be years later that I would discover that no bombs had hit those buildings. What had happened in New York City is emergency rent control. And that went back to World War II, because when all these soldiers came pouring back on ships from Europe, rents went through the ceiling. A lot of them said, hey, I'm from down on the farm, and New York City life seems a lot more fun than going back to horse and plow and tractors and pitch and hay. And they got jobs, and rents went through the ceiling. So as an emergency rent control measure, the city of New York said, we're going to freeze all rents. No landlords can raise the rents. But it's just temporary. Well, they enacted that right after World War II. I forget if it was December of 45 or March of 46. I was only a toddler then. But in 64, I saw the results. Buildings abandoned, all the windows broken, hobos, prostitutes, down and out homeless people, drunks, just habitating, and nobody's collecting rent from these apartments. What had happened is when that rent control stayed on for more than a year, they found it politically impossible to repeal it. And temporary rent control became permanent rent control. When permanent rent control was in, people with money said, I'm not building any new apartment buildings just to have rent control freeze my rents, while my maintenance costs keep going up and up and up, and inflation keeps going up and up and up, and I can't raise my rents. That's what they're saying in this article in the association, Apartment House Association. And they're right. What is wrong with the dingbats we have in the state legislature is they don't represent landlords. They only vaguely represent the liberal, uneducated Democrats, only vaguely, and only if they're gay and transvestite and wacky. I was in a funny bar the other day. It had women, a door for a bathroom for women. Then it had a label over here for men. And in the middle, it had a door said, for gender confused people in need of a bathroom. I had to open it and look. I don't have a gender problem or knowing what my mental affiliation sexually is, but I had to open it. So I pull open the door. It's a broom closet with a pail there and some Kleenexes and tissue paper and a roll of toilet paper, and it's just a bucket on the floor. Okay, I wonder what the men's room is like. And I went in and it was normal. That just cracked me up. That was funnier than heck. Men on one side, women on the other side, and in between, gender confused people. It's like people aren't satisfied with what God makes you. They got to tweak what God has done. And I'm looking at this rent control. This is for all of California. What's happening is the wacko crazy people said, rents are too high, and they are. In Los Angeles, in the Koreatown area, and many other areas up in Hollywood, a one-bedroom can now cost you anywhere from $1,100 to $2,500 or $3,000 2 bedrooms in this one building I am aware of is an old renovated building. They did a beautiful job of renovating. The rents are $4,000 a month for a tiny 2-bedroom that is about 900 square feet. Now they redid them and they're all beautiful and like, you know, up to snuff, and they got cables in it. They didn't have cable TV before. But the parking, this is like 100 and some unit building. They only got like 20 parking spaces under the building because when it was built, cars were just starting to happen back around 1905 or something. So then they've got 100 units, there's like only parking for 20 people, and they're getting $4,000 a month. All the rest have to park out on the street. Brand new buildings are popping up. They're getting $3,500, $4,000 a month for brand new buildings, but they do give you 1 or 2 parking spaces. If you bring in rent control, say Santa Monica style, or Santa Monica is worse than Los Angeles. Santa Monica rent control is like this. You've been living there 30 years, you're paying $250 a month rent. You've been there, you say you're my age. Your kid moves in with you. Your kid is 30 years old. I die. My kid now says, hey, I'm grandfathered in through my dad. I only have to pay $230. The going rent in Santa Monica on that block is around $6,500 a month for a 1-bedroom unit. And the only way the landlord can get rid of bad tenants or even good paying tenants is to find that they missed paying the rent on time, and then they've got exceptions where they let them get away with it. The result has been all new construction for rental property has stopped in Santa Monica. But they made one exception now. They said if your rents are like luxury apartments and it's over 10 grand a month, then there's no rent control. So what do you think got built, people? Luxury rental property. For the average little guy who's working for 12 or 15 bucks at Starbucks an hour, he can't afford $10,000 a month. So the old people that are there, yeah, it's great for them. They can live on Social Security till they croak in that unit. And that's literally what has to happen. You have to have somebody who dies, has no relatives move in, and then you can redo. But the kind of rent control they're talking now would allow cities to just say, you build a new unit, you put out your rent, and the rent can never go up. Well, with that kind of an equation, let's put it this way. Supposing you own a gas station, and you build a brand new gas station, and you got a gas pump, and you did this, say, back in 1974, and gas was going for 35 cents a gallon. And they put gas control on price of gasoline, which they did in LA for a brief time, a long time ago. Today, the gas station has to pay more than $1 a gallon to get gas. Most of the rest of it is taxes. Road taxes, gasoline taxes, shipping taxes, all kinds of hazardous waste taxes. And so your gasoline prices come in California anyway to $3.50 to $4.25 if you're in Beverly Hills a gallon, which means if you can't sell it for more than the 1974 price, you're going to go out of business really quick. Or supposing they said, we're going to have a labor control. We're not going to let any labor union raise labor rates more than, 1% a century. So the rate is $10, but you can't live on $10. You need to make 25 or 30, and somebody will pay it, but they can't pay it to you because they put control. That's what rent control is. What happens is the money will flee the area, just like they did in New York City. You'll have slums, and eventually what happened was, I thought, pure justice, because what happened is the city of New York, who slammed the landlords, and a lot of them were Jewish, that's true. Those guys just grabbed what money they could, said bye-bye to New York City, walked away, abandoned. They didn't even try to sell the property. No one would buy it because you couldn't raise the rents. You couldn't even repair. By 1955, you couldn't even repair the buildings for the amount of rent you were getting. All those people left. They came out to LA. The Jewish landlords bought up property, built things. There was no rent control. It was great. We had cheap rents. When I came to Los Angeles in 1974, I couldn't afford a one-bedroom, I thought. It was $100 a month for a one-bedroom in a small building that had a swimming pool. Not all buildings had swimming pools. It was an older building, but I got a job as the apartment manager, and I got free rent. Saved me $100 a month. This was long before I filed for PTSD and Vietnam, or, related issues. Well, that same building that I used to manage in 1974, where I rented singles for, I think it was $85, and when I finished being manager and quit, I think it was $1.10 for a single and $1.25 for one bedroom, but you had a swimming pool. And it had a gate to keep outside children from coming in and jumping in the pool. That same building now, those singles are going for $1,500 a month, and they filled in the pool with dirt. There is no swimming pool. It's been capped over. They don't want the liability. They're trying to get their insurance down. So, I have a guest here named Daniel, but we're going to get to him in just a minute because he's got a long story to tell you. And it's an interesting story, worth listening to. I just needed to tell you about this, the negative consequences of Costa-Hawkins repeal. When they put on rent control, they passed this bill, and they said, okay, if you build new buildings, they're free of rent control. Now the wacko, crazy, liberal, socialists, whatever you want to call them, I call them communists, they want to say we're going to repeal this, and even the new buildings built since the 1990s when they put rent control on old rental units, but the new rental units had no rent control. Now we're going to have rent control on everything, and we want to make it statewide. This is so aggravating, it almost irks me to register to vote, just to vote against this bill, or this proposition they got on the ballot, not the bill, but the proposition, if it gets on the ballot. So what I'm telling you, if you want to really see the rental market disappear so there's nothing you can rent, nothing you can afford, and that's already happening. You see 2 and 3 families renting a 2-bedroom apartment and sharing one bathroom. You see 2 or 3 families buying a house because they can't find an apartment. 2 or 3 families buying a house. That's happening right now in Santa Barbara County and has been going on for a long time. And let me point out, the city chief of police of Santa Barbara gets a big fat salary. I mean, it's fabulous with all the benefits. They had to bribe him with a housing package because he thought it looks bad when our chief of police won't even live in the city of Santa Barbara. So on top of all the benefits, pension and all that, they said, and here's a whole big pile of money so you can come back in and you can rent a home, because they wanted the chief of police of Santa Barbara to live in the city of Santa Barbara. He was living, I think, up towards someplace like Buellton, which used to be affordable, and quickly that's changing. So when you've got to bribe the chief of police with an extra pay package so he can afford to live in Santa Barbara, something's wrong, and you can't control it by the state. California is over $40 million. Here's my final solution. Forget the Federal Reserve, forget Congress. They don't represent you, they don't care about you. They only care about the corporations. But your sheriff and your district attorney ought to care about you because you elect them, in theory, directly with your vote. You can't control your congressman. They're bribed beyond. That's why everyone wants to be a congresswoman or man. Because the bribery is so good and they never get, I shouldn't say never, because they did put one from San Diego in prison. He was taking bribes. And there was a famous congressman from Chicago area, Illinois, can't think of his name, Rokankowski or something like that. He went to prison for taking bribes. And yeah, once in a while the FBI does a showcase, say, well, we don't like this guy because he wouldn't fund the FBI special dark box project, so we're going to go after him for bribes. They already knew that all these guys are taking bribes. They just don't arrest them all. Because you'd have to arrest virtually 80% of the Congress, in my opinion, based on what my cousin, who used to work in the FBI, he's retired and dead now, said, you know, they got all these people on tape. They could arrest just about any Congress they want, except Ron Paul, who's not in Congress anymore. He was so squeaky clean, they had to badger him. But I digress. This rent control, if you're asked to sign anything that's going to repeal laws that allow landlords to raise the rents to the free market, rent control is not the answer. The answer is putting gold and silver backing behind our money like it used to be prior to the Vietnam War. Just when I was going off to Vietnam, they started taking the silver out of the coins. And after that, inflation just went rampant because there was no control. There's no gold. Forget those YouTube clips that tell you America's the #1 gold hoarding country. We don't have any gold. The United States, neither the Corporation United States, created in 1879, nor the Organic United States has any gold bars. It's just one plate of lined gold bars at Fort Knox. So when somebody like Ron Paul said, I demand to see it, they'll open it and let them take a peek, and then they shut the door. Okay, go away, Congressman. You had your peek. You saw the shiny gold. But behind that, you think there's stacks and stacks. There aren't. All that was transferred to the World Trade Center, stolen from the World Trade Center. Then they had to destroy the World Trade Center. So the World Gold Depository there on the bottom floors, they never could account for all that gold. It just mystically disappeared. Isn't that interesting? It mystically, how does gold disappear? Think about it. That's a lot of gold teeth. Most people can't even afford to have gold bridges or gold crowns on their teeth anymore. But this rent control thing is not the answer. The answer is getting honest money back, so when a working man earns $10 in gold or silver, he gets a 10 silver dollars. When that was true, I was working at a drugstore at age 17 and 18 for, I think, 25 cents an hour. I think 25 cents was the minimum wage, and then these crazy legislatures down in Madison, Wisconsin, raised the minimum wage to 35 cents an hour. I thought, oh, that's good. Another dime an hour. That means I can go to the movie theater on a 10-cent dime, but it was a silver dime. When our currency is destroyed, we lose all power. Your Congress critters, it's a waste of time voting. You ought to be busy indicting and impeaching under 504 U.S. 36, which was mentioned in that intro when I had Daniel Dizak sitting right here where this gentleman is now sitting, and we're going to get to him in a minute. But I had to read you this article. If you're asked to sign something that's going to bring on rent control, just say no. Remember that phrase? Just say no to drugs, say no to rent control. Just go look at what New York happened in New York. That's what will happen to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Fresno, all the big places. It's a really bad idea. But you're going to